Okay, man. Yeah, I feel like I had to learn this lesson early on in my time at Microcosm almost 10 years ago when I was like, had a lot of ideas for authors who could write books for us and started to pitch them to authors, even though Joe was like, don't do it, don't do it. And I did. And you know what? I had a lot of meetings. I spent a lot of time talking to people, and not a single one of those books got written.
That in a lot of cases, authors are very motivated about their ideas, and it's harder to make them motivated about your ideas. Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Elly Blue, the vice president of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to answer a reader question.
Thanks, reader.
How do I pitch an idea to an author? Is it better as an assignment or as a collaboration? Ooh. How do I set up the legal framework? Do I need an NDA? How do you keep the author from running to another publisher?
Oh.
It's like they've really thought this through, and like it sounds like they're thinking about the worst case scenarios better than the best case scenarios, if I'm being honest.
Ah, interesting. So like I guess what are they talking about, like being a packager or?
Essentially, yeah, they're saying like, I have an idea, I want an author to write it. How do I do it? And how do I make them do it with me when I give them my really great idea?
Yeah, like if you're doing like a work for hire thing and the person is a freelance writer and you're like, I'm going to pay you this much to write my idea, and then you like sit down and have an agreement about that, that's one thing. But if you're like, hey, what you're doing is really cool, you should write a book for us about it, that's much less likely to come to pass.
Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it's a worry. I don't think an NDA is necessary, which is a non-disclosure agreement.
No.
For those who have never had to suffer through one of those. I don't think you necessarily need a legal framework when you're in the proposing stage, and I don't think it's a worry at all for the author to run to another publisher because, first of all, the author is going to need to like have a relationship with that publisher. Second, the publisher is going to need to actually be interested and see what you see. And then third, they're going to like have to come to terms where they're like two disparate parties. Like the probability of all that happening is just not really there.
Yeah, like the idea isn't what's valuable, it's like what you make out of it that's valuable.
The execution, as we say.
Yeah.
And the idea is business.
Hopefully nobody gets executed.
Let us hope, yes. So, and it's, you have an agreement, and in a lot of cases that, you don't really want to get into too many cases of having an hourly writing arrangement with a freelancer because, like, there's just the costs spiral out of control really quickly. So you'd want to go the other way and either say, like, here's a flat rate that I'm going to pay you, and then I will own the finished work. And essentially, if you're paying an upfront sum, you would, and it was your idea, it's fair that you would own the finished work even if you didn't create it. But you would have to pay them, to a degree that, is agreeable, but also you can both sleep at night, And because in a lot of cases, somebody will agree, and then if the number is too low, they're just never going to do it.
Right. Or you like have a royalty arrangement. We've honestly been trying to do more work for hire work, and all of the authors are choosing the royalty arrangement.
And I think it's partly because and most controversial statement I ever say every week on this pod, because publishing is fundamentally fair. Like the way things are set up, the idea that you would get paid a royalty based on the actual final sales of the work is far more fair to the author and to the publisher than paying, for work for hire or any other manner. Like chaining the success and the outcome to the pay scale, it feels like a burn when the book flops. But when the book succeeds, everybody is, nobody is going to come back and be like, what? Where's mine? Because it's, I believe fundamentally fair to have those two things be correlated.
I love that that's your most scandalous statement.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, go meet these authors that you love or these potential authors. But yeah, don't place too much stock into it until the book is written.
And the only way this really goes wrong is if the author is under a right of refusal contract, meaning that another publisher gets to look at it beforehand.
Right, that's a good point.
So in those cases, if you're pitching them the kind of book that they write all the time, then their publisher is probably going to be like, oh, this is your new book idea. Okay, yes, we'll take it. Whereas most of the time, they're not, and they wouldn't. And, even when I have a really good idea with a really talented author, the thought of going around and pitching it and getting rejected is just too exhausting for them, so they don't want to do that. Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
on Twitter at microcosm,
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
on Instagram at microcosm_pub,
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.